from College of Business and Law, RMIT, University Australia. Hello, Prof. Yuli Suseno.
Halo, selamat pagi, Bu.
Selamat pagi. I hope
Ini
you,
saya
ya.
4 hours ahead in the eastern part of Australia, Melbourne. So I'm 2:30 in the afternoon.
Oh my God, very early. Okay,
Yeah.
now we are going to the session 2. I hope you still tune and enjoy in learning and participating for the second topic of 3-in-1 Doctor of Administrative Science event. The second speaker is Professor Yuli Suseno from College of Business and Law, RMIT, University Australia, that will share about writing for publication. Professor Suseno will be accompanied by Pak Saiful Gosi as moderator. He is a student of Doctor Administrative Science in 2021 academic year. Now I will hand over it to Pak Saiful to conduct the second session. Please, Mas Saiful.
Okay, thank you, Bu Penny. I do hope all you can hear me. Okay.
Yes, clear.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. Selamat pagi, the honorable lecturer, student, and all participants, especially Prof. Yuli Suseno from Australia. It's my pleasure to be moderator for the second session with the topic is writing for a publication. My name is Saiful Gosi. Will be accompany in this session for the interesting topic, of course. And thank you, Prof. Yuli Suseno, for coming in our virtual seminar. It is, I think, is valuable opportunity to get insight from you, especially in writing for a publication. As we know that as a student in the doctoral program, I think a publication is one of obligation with something is very, very mysterious and very, very challenging for us. And then before Professor Yuli Suseno will present or deliver his material, I will try to give some profile. Dear participant, may I introduce to you all our guest speaker, Professor Yuli Suseno is from a College of Business and Law, RMIT, University Australia. Their education background is the Bachelor of Commerce in University of Western Australia, and then Master of Science in National University of Singapore, and then the doctoral degree or the doctoral of philosophy is from University of Queensland. And then Prof. Yuli Suseno is currently the Deputy Dean Learning and Teaching and Professor of Management in the School of Management. And before joining in RMIT, she was the Deputy Head of School in the Newcastle Business School in the University of Newcastle. And then Professor Yuli Suseno has an interdisciplinary background, and her current research interests are in the areas of entrepreneurship and innovation, social capital, and social network and strategy. And Prof. Yuli Suseno also has published so many articles in several reputable journals. We can take a look in her Google Scholar, as I think. And then Prof. Yuli has received several awards from her work, such as Management Discipline Award, and then SPI University Professional Development Award, and then Dean's Award for Excellence in Undergraduate Teaching. They are all about Prof. Yuli. But again, thanks, Prof. Yuli. You give a great opportunity to us to get your presentation. And then in this session, Prof. Yuli, you have time for maybe 50 until 60 minutes for your presentation and sharing for all about your publication experience. And then maybe we have 15 minutes in Q&A. For Professor Yuli Suseno, maybe you can deliver in English, or maybe if you, I think you can deliver in bahasa Indonesia too. And maybe all participants, you can deliver your question in bahasa Indonesia. It's never mind. I think I do hope Prof. Yusilo can, Prof. Ulysses can understand for our question. Okay, time is just Prof. Ulysses. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih Pak Saiful. Saya senang sekali bisa diundang invitationnya for me to speak today. It's such an honor to be here virtually with all of you to be presenting this topic on writing for publication. Kalau nggak keberatan Pak, saya will be speaking in English ya Pak. But happy to answer any questions later on in English or bahasa Indonesia.
Okay, thank you.
My name once again is Yuli Suseno. And seperti Bapak Saiful bilang, I'm Professor of Management at RMIT University in Melbourne. I'm also the Deputy Dean Learning and Teaching in the School of Management here and at RMIT. In terms of my background, tadi Bapak Saiful sudah bilang kalau I completed my PhD from the University of Queensland, which is one of the group of 8 universities in Australia. And I did my Master of Science in Management of Technology from the National University of Singapore. So I consider myself as an accidental academic. I spent more than 10 years working in the industry in various areas. So I joined academia quite late in my career, but I absolutely enjoyed it because obviously it broadens my horizon and perspectives, being able to look at things from the practical side as well as the scholarly aspect. Now, because of my industry background, my research interests are quite varied. I would say that my interests really lie in 3 different areas. One is entrepreneurship. The second research scope is in innovation management, particularly with respect to technology management because of my master degree. And I also research in the broader management organization studies field. So I'm an active scholar and I've published quite a bit in highly ranked journals. In Australia, we use the ABDC ranking list, which stands for the Australian Business Deans Council list. And it has a list of, the A star, the A, B, and C journals across different fields within the broader management. Now, in terms of entrepreneurship, I've just listed there a couple of my work in recent years. I've worked on social entrepreneurship with an article published in Business and Society, which is an A journal. I've worked on digital entrepreneurship. I've worked on women's entrepreneurship, and I'm currently working on another entrepreneurship project, particularly focusing on the marginalization of migrant entrepreneurs in Australia. My research is also about innovation management. I'm particularly interested in the sharing economy. So I was really fascinated to understand more in terms of how this new economy changes the way we work. And one of my PhD students is actually looking at the sharing economy as well. So my research area in this in this sort of field has been published in several highly ranked journals as well, A star and A. And this ranges from the personnel review on the sharing economy to a paper that I published in the International Journal of Human Resource Management, looking at change readiness for artificial intelligence adoption. I've also worked and published in the Journal of Strategic Information Systems, which is an A star journal on value creation in digital innovation ecosystems. And another sort of my research area is in the broader management field. I've published quite a bit of work as well in that area, and many of them are much more focused on networks and social capital. So I will draw from some of my papers to illustrate some of the points that I will be talking about in this session. Now, tadi Pak Saiful bilang kalau writing for publication is a mystery as well. Now, when I started my PhD, I did not really know how to read a journal paper, and I did not know how to understand it. I was reading them, but I wasn't really, aware of what they meant. I kept telling myself, who in the industry would read this kind of paper? Who in the industry would write this way? Because obviously I came from the industry, many years in the industry. It's totally different to the way we write in the industry. Of course, I did not know how to write a journal article as well. As you know, some of the structure of some of the sentences in a journal article seems to be very mechanical. Yeah, so I came from the industry, so it's just a very different way of writing and presenting. So it took me a while, but it dawned on me finally that this is a process. Writing is a process. Publishing is a process. The process can be long or it can be short, but all of us need to go through this process. Even if you are a seasoned academic, which means that you have published quite extensively, the process of publishing one paper to another paper can be quite different as well. And for many of the A-star and A journals, it can take you years to get your paper published with many rounds of revisions, but we all go through the process, right? So why do we have to publish here? Well, publishing is actually one of the necessary steps in scientific research process. It is a way to present our contributions to the scientific community. It is also a way to strengthen our reputation. Even if you are still a graduate student doing your PhD, for example, publication is also important because if you have publications under your name, when you submit your thesis, your work and contributions actually make a much stronger case of defense. So they actually looked at your, whether you have actually published when you submit your thesis. Now, of course, publishing is also important for our career progression. Some of you might have heard of the term publish or perish, which is a very common phrase used to describe the pressure we all are facing to publish our research findings, to stay relevant and be successful within the academic community. The term basically implies that if you do not publish, you will basically perish, which means there is limited progress in terms of your career. Now, getting a job in an Australian university, for example, is getting harder. Not only that the panel would want to see that you have a PhD, but having a PhD is not enough. You will also need to show a couple of publications, maybe 2 or 3 journal articles and a couple of several conference papers, even to get a lecturer position. PhD graduates with a few publications may actually convince the potential university of their research potential, which makes them much more likely to be hired. So if you do not have a publication under your belt, it is actually quite challenging to get a permanent lecturer job in a university in Australia. Even when you try to progress in your career, you won't be promoted very fast, or even you are not promoted at all. You will probably remain in your academic level forever if you do not publish. So that's why we have the term publish or perish. Now, we also have another term here that it's called the publish and flourish, which means that if you publish, you are much more likely to be flourishing. You will be much more likely to be recognized. You are much more likely to be rewarded in terms of your academic career and progression. So academic career in most universities around the world increasingly depends on your publications. Of course, if you can publish both quantity and quality itself may not be a sole indicator. You need to publish quantity and quality. That would be an even much stronger case for you in terms of getting a job and obviously for promotion. In several research-intensive universities, your academic career is actually determined by the number of A-star or A journals that you publish. So it can be pretty stressful because there is an increasing pressure, the constant pressure that you have to continue publishing. So there is no stopping in research, really. And our performance measure sometimes is also dictated by how well we integrate and use research-informed teaching in our courses. So there is an expectation that we have to make sure that our teaching is informed by the scholarly work and recent research findings. It actually carries more weight in the classroom when you are talking about a specific topic that you have been researching in, or in fact, you are leading a project in the area. So that research-informed teaching is very important. So sometimes kayak saya di kelas, saya mengajar, saya ngomong sama my students, I've been researching in this area, this is my research project, and they were like, Wow, tell me more about your research. So that's about research-informed teaching, which is really important. So it's important for us to do research, but it can be very tricky to get published, especially in top-tier journals, even when English is your first language. But I would say that even though publication can be a very tricky process, it's also a strategic process. So for an academic writing and wanting to be published, we need to have a strategic plan. So this is about thinking about, the what, the why, where do you want to publish, with whom do you want to publish with, and how do you actually want to publish this? So before we talk about the specifics of writing for publication, I wanted to cover very quickly in terms of the publication list and rankings to answer the topic on where do we want to publish. There is obviously Scopus, there is ISI. These are bibliographic databases operated by different companies. Scopus is operated by Elsevier, and ISI is operated by Thomson Reuters under Clarivate. So Scopus provides a higher citation count than ISI. It obviously has a much broader journal coverage for the social sciences and humanities in comparison to ISI. But these are databases, but I want to focus on the list and the rankings. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, in Australia, we use the ABDC ranking. So that's the first one there. Perhaps in Indonesia, we use the SIMAGO SJR ranking. SIMAGO Journal Rank is a measure of scientific influence of academic journals, and they get their citations from Scopus. So normally when we talk, this is Scopus ranking, is actually a SIMAGO SJR. And they look at the importance or the prestige of the journals in terms of quadrants. So Q1 represents the top 25% of journals. The same thing with the ABDC ranking. But there is a slight difference between the ABDC ranking and the SGR ranking. Those journals that are ranked A star and A in the ABDC ranking are always Scopus Q1 journals, always. But the Q1 journals are not necessarily A star or A journals in the ABDC list. So in a way, the ABDC list is much more rigorous. So many of the business schools in Australia adopt the ABDC list instead of Scopus ranking to evaluate the quality of the publications. In the UK, there is also the ABS ranking, which stands for the Chartered Association of Business Schools ranking. And in many American universities, they use FT50 or Financial Times 50 ranking, which is basically a list of the top 50 journals in the world. And this covers a wide discipline areas. So that's a list of the first half of the FT50 journals, obviously listed in alphabetical order. So for management scholars, I presume that many of us are management scholars. There is the Academy of Management Journal, there's Academy of Management Review, there is Administrative Science Quarterly, Harvard Business Review, and so on and so forth. For the economists, there is the American Economic Review as well as Econometrica. There's the second half of the FT50 journal list. So as you can see from the list, the FT50 is very broad, covering management, marketing, information systems, operations management, economics, accounting, finance, entrepreneurship, strategy, and even political economy. Now, even though it's very broad, there's only 50 journals. So these are really top journals in their respective fields. So you can imagine it's very, very competitive, even for journals outside of the FT50 list. Those listed in the A star and the A journal ranking, they are very, very competitive as well. Now, every journal has their acceptance rate, which is really a measurement of how many manuscripts they accept for publication as compared to how many papers they receive. It is very implicit. They are not explicit. They don't really tell us what is the acceptance rate. Elsevier has done some reviews on the acceptance rate. They reviewed the 2,300 journals there, and what they found is that the larger journals have lower acceptance rates, roughly about 10% acceptance rate, which is really low. Some of them even lower than that. The older journals also have lower acceptance rate, and the high impact factor journals have also been found to have relatively low acceptance rates. Now, the acceptance rate may not mean anything much because the calculations is not straightforward and it differs from one journal to another journal, and it can also be inflated. But generally, journals with lower acceptance rates are thought to be more prestigious. The other one is impact factor or IF factor. This is really the average annual number of citations per article published. The higher the impact factor is generally thought that the journal is more prestigious in a way. But again, this number can be inflated. As you can see on the slide there, the impact factor number is actually impacted by the number of citations. The more it is being cited, the higher will be the impact factor. Now, some journals, though, they are not ranked in the list that I've shown you earlier, or in some paid to submit journals. They have high impact factor as well. I've seen one journal that has an impact factor of 20. It means that they are highly cited, but it does not mean that they are prestigious. Their high impact factor could mean that it is much easier for other scholars to read their work and cite accordingly because the articles are easily available, unlike some of the top journals in the list. So impact factor does not accurately tell us how prestigious the journal is. So to know about the prestige of the journal, obviously, it comes down to the reputable list that you rely on and the understanding within the academic community of the ranking of those journals. Now, coming back to the strategic planning of publishing, in terms of where to publish, it might be a good idea to have a relatively good understanding of which journals publish what types of articles in terms of the methods. So you can see there on the slide, different journals and the publication rate of qualitative and mixed methods in those journals as compared to quantitative methods. Now, the chart there is very, very outdated, but I don't think the trends have changed very much. So as you can see from the list, Academy of Management Journal, the top one there, it only publishes 12% of articles based on purely qualitative method. So obviously, nearly 90% of articles that they publish are quantitative based. Administrative Science Quarterly is the same thing. They only publish about 12% of purely qualitative paper. Others like Journal of Management, Journal of Applied Psychology, Personnel Psychology publish less than 1% of purely qualitative paper. So if you are an academic publishing purely qualitative method, you might probably want to target different journals. You might want to target Journal of Management Studies, Organization Studies, Human Relations, or British Journal of Management, and so on, and not necessarily targeting those journals on that list. So you need to know where to publish. The second thing to consider on where to publish is to look at the aims of the journals. So for example, the Academy of Management Journal, which is obviously an FT50 journal, the aim of the journal is to publish empirical research that tests, extends, or builds management theory and contributes to management practice. So if you have a theory paper with no data, do not send it to the Academy of Management Journal, no matter how good your work is, because they only publish empirical research that's clearly stated in their aims. Another example is the Journal of Business Ethics. The impact factor is 6.1. This is an FT50 journal as well, so one of the top 50 journals in the world. JBE only publishes original articles, and the articles can come from a wide variety of methodological and disciplinary perspectives. Obviously, quantitative, qualitative, they welcome that as well. But the study needs to be concerned with ethical issues related to business. So again, that's very clearly stated in the aims of the journal. So in the case of JBE, has to be related to business ethics. Another example is Asia Pacific Journal of Management. The journal's aim is to publish original manuscripts, but they have to be set in the Asia Pacific region. So if your data are from the Western European countries, you can forget about publishing in the Asia Pacific Journal of Management. So in other words, look at the aims of the journals before even considering submitting to that journal, because you don't want to be desk rejected because it does not fit with the aims of the journal. The next one is covering in terms of the topic choice. Now here we need to answer the what and the why question. Now I draw this from the work of Colquitt and George. They published this article several years ago in the Academy of Management Journal. Sometimes junior academics ask me, what topic, Yuli, do I have to publish in? Well, the most immediate answer to that question is really the topic that is close to your heart. Okay, I mean, you have got to be passionate about a topic to want to publish in that topic or want to do research in that particular area. The other starting point to consider when selecting a topic is whether the study actually confronts or contributes to a grand challenge, or whether there are still unresolved problems. This is about the significance of the topic. So for example, if you look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, for example, you try to eliminate global poverty or eliminate diseases or hunger. These are grand challenges and wicked problems, unresolved problems. Obviously, you need to look at the design of the study as well. But if you can tackle problems like this, that is a big significant in terms of your topic. Another way of identifying a topic is spend time to read the limitations and the future research directions section of the most highly cited empirical papers published in your research field. That's another good starting point. So I always look at the limitations and the directions for future research as well. Another way of looking at a topic choice is whether the topic addresses novelty. So does your work add change the discourse to move in an entirely different or new direction? So for example, I recently read an article on entrepreneurial hustle by Fisher and colleagues. Basically, the article is looking at entrepreneurs' actions. Now, a lot of studies, particularly the quantitative studies, some of us here are highly trained in quantitative methods, but in many of these quantitative studies, they look at relationships between constructs, but we still don't know what exactly the actors or the entrepreneurs need to do to navigate uncertainty as part of their entrepreneurial ventures. So the authors, Fisher and colleagues here, came up with this concept of entrepreneurial hustle that you can see from the data structure on the slide there. This is the first time this concept is introduced. So what you see there on the slide is that the authors came up with this in terms of the actions that the entrepreneurs need to hustle. The first one is about urgency, the fact that they need to act quickly, they need to move fast, they need to operate rapidly, and so on and so forth. The study is very interesting. It's very novel because nobody has looked at this concept before. That's why it got published in the Journal of Management Studies, which is an A-star journal and an FT50 journal, because it's totally new. The next one is about curiosity. You need to focus on a topic that sparks your curiosity. Now, when you read a storybook, for example, there are some storybooks that get you wanting to read more and more as you flip through the pages. It does not want you to stop. In fact, it's very, very hard for you to stop reading those books. It's the same with an article. Some good articles are really written in such a way that it gets your attention even from the title. So, for example, I saw this article recently. It's called The Human Sustainability and Work by Barnes and colleagues. It's a very recent article. The minute I saw the title, it already sparked my curiosity. What does it mean by human sustainability? It got me wanting to read more about it. Then the first sentence of the article is shown on the slide there. How can work be accomplished while sustaining the human capital that enables it? That's a great question. Now, the authors then continue, to date, research on this question has been piecemeal and indirect with different literatures and paradigms offering important but not integrated insights. Now, already that was intriguing. And as I continued, it got pretty cool. I recommend you to read this article as well. It deals obviously with a very important topic. It also draws on a theory from the natural sciences, and then the authors apply it to employees and organizations. I just couldn't stop reading it. I'm sure that's exactly what the editor and the reviewers experienced when they read through the article. It was just solid from the get-go. Another point about the what and the why an article should be published in a top journal is about the scope of the study. An article in a top tier journal is broad in scope, which means that the topic is adequately sampled in terms of the incorporation of relevant constructs and perspectives. I draw once again from the article by Colquitt and George, who mentioned that any studies that aim to tackle grand challenges cannot do so if they are not ambitious in their scope. Now, an example of this is an article by Seibert and colleagues that I read a couple of years ago. This article actually won the Best Paper Award in the Academy of Management Journal, which is obviously a top tier journal. Because my research is on social capital, I read quite a bit of articles on social capital, but this article by Seibert and colleagues was just phenomenal because of its broad scope. Now, just to give you a quick background, the existing discussions of social capital have pointed to three theories, three theoretical perspectives. There is the theory of weak time, there is the structural whole theory, there is also the social resource theory. Seibert and colleagues could have chosen to focus on one of these theories, but instead of focusing on one, they actually focus on all the three perspectives. They also included three mediators, as you can see there on the slide. There is information access, resource access, career sponsorship. They also look at the dependent variables, three of them: salary, promotion, career satisfaction. So as you can see that the study is really broad in scope. The idea here is to be bold in the scope of your study. The next thing is about setting the hook, which is about the how to write a paper. Now, I'm basing this on Grant and Pollock's article published in the AMJ. They break it down to three aspects: who cares? Second one is what do and don't we know, and so what? And the third one is what will we learn? So the first one is about who cares. Now, we need to be clear in terms of what it is that we are trying to convey. What is your topic? What is your research question? Why is it interesting? Why is it important to theory and practice? It is not enough to say that nobody has looked into this variable before, but you need to think about and argue for what would be the impact of including new variables to theory and practice. So here I'm using my article to illustrate the example. This article is published in the Journal of Business Ethics, which is an FT50 journal. So what you see on the slide is the introduction of the article. I'm not going to read through everything, but in the article we mentioned early in the paper, the purpose of the study. And we argued that research on informal networks remains limited and the topic warrants further investigation, and we justified why that is the case. Then in the second paragraph, we state and broaden our scope. So we are not only looking at the general informal networks in the study, we wanted to look at how informal networks operate to socially exclude women in the workplace. So we talked about the issue of social exclusion of women, and we argued that this is still an area in business ethics that has been rarely explored. And then we explain what is the meaning of social exclusion of women. So those yellow highlights outline what we are going to focus on in the study. We talked about societal norms. We talked about the perpetuation of gender inequality. We talked about the fact that women are frequently excluded from business conversations because they are not part of the informal networks. We also highlighted the fact that gender segregation and discrimination are still common in many workplaces around the world, and in fact in many society. So that is to hook the readers on why this topic matters for theory and practice. So we need to be able to convince the readers from the get-go. The next thing that we have to address is the so what question. This is when you bring in prior studies, what they have found, what still remains as the mystery or the puzzle. So basically here you argue for the what do and don't we know, and you have to bridge two conversations. So Locke and Biddle call this as establishing the field. These basically involves entering two very different conversations and you bridge them. And you either identify the conversation and describes how it needs to move forward. They call this as progressive coherence. Nggak tahu bahasa Indonesianya apa itu, progressive coherence. So there are conversations here different, and you synthesize them together, so you bring them forward, or you present competing perspectives and you explain how you will resolve these competing perspectives. Locke and Biddle call this as non-coherence. So just to give an example here, I used my article published in the Journal of Business Ethics here to illustrate progressive coherence, right? If you read through the paragraphs, we wanted to highlight that there are lots of existing studies out there, and existing studies have looked at informal networks, but they are predominantly done in the context of underdeveloped or absent formal institutions. So we basically outline what the existing literature has done. Then we picked a discourse in the second paragraph there, which is the fact that we extend the discussion on informal networks by looking at the interplay of informal networks and informal institutions in a nation with robust informal institutions. So a lot of studies, existing studies, if you are familiar with networks theory, a lot of these studies are done in the weak formal institutions. But our study is different. We want to focus on the robust, the strong formal institutions. So that's how we differentiate our study. And specifically, we want to examine the informal networks, informal institutions that leads to the social exclusion of women. So that is the progressive coherence. You identify a conversation and describe how you bring this to move forward. Okay, now I also would like to share another article of mine. This article was published in Business and Society, which is another top ABDCA journal. We did a bibliometric study on the topic of social entrepreneurship. I want to illustrate what Locke and Biddle talked about as non-coherence. So where you present competing perspectives, perspective yang beda-beda, and how your study could actually resolve this. So in our case, we highlighted different perspectives of existing research on social entrepreneurship. You can read the highlighted sentences there, but basically we mentioned that there are some studies that are focused on individuals, looking at, for example, their compassion in driving their social ventures. There are other studies that have looked at social entrepreneurship from the organization perspective, looking at social impact and outcomes. There are also other studies that looked at the macro level issues, such as the economic, political, and societal context. There are also other studies that look at the how-to aspect of implementing social entrepreneurship. So as you can see that there are many, many different perspectives in existing literature on social entrepreneurship. So they're very non-coherent in a way. And our task in this study is to not only present the non-coherence, but to also resolve the non-coherence. This is what Locke and Biddle talk about as problematizing the field. So this is about convincing the readers that knowledge about the topic needs to be developed further because they are incomplete. So here you need to be able to address the so what question, solving the problem of your research topic. So in our article on social entrepreneurship, as I've highlighted earlier, there are many different existing studies on social entrepreneurship. There is the non-coherence, but we argue in our paper, in our study, that existing studies are so broad. They are so broad, they're competing, and they have not really provided a comprehensive overview of existing social entrepreneurship literature. So we argue in our study that there are still very, very few efforts to synthesize the different research streams. So what we plan to do in the study is to synthesize the social entrepreneurship research to bring the loose ends together. So in the paper, we are very clear in terms of highlighting what we know and what we don't know as yet, focusing specifically in our context, bringing the different perspectives of social entrepreneurship together to answer the so what question. Now, once you have addressed the so what question, the next one is to address what will we learn from your study? How does your work actually change or advance or challenge existing scholarly work? This is where you outline the contributions of your study. So in our case, in our article published in JBE, we outline 3 contributions, and we are very, very clear in terms of our contributions. The first one is about adding knowledge to the informal networks literature. The second one is about contribution to informal networks and informal institutions, particularly focusing on the business ethics and gender diversity and inclusion. And the third one is about contribution in terms of international business literature, because we collected our data from multinational companies. So we're very, very clear in terms of our contributions of the study. Now, just because a gap exists does not necessarily make the study interesting or worthwhile. Many authors actually write the introduction by stating that there is a gap, but they stop there without clearly noting why filling the gap is important and interesting. Why is it important? Why is it interesting? So you need to be able to highlight, convince the readers of the importance of your study. So once again, it's important to remember these 3 aspects of setting the hook. Who cares? What do and don't we know? And the so what factor. And finally, convey to the readers what will they learn from your study? What will your contributions of the study be? Now, there is a decision tree here from Alvinson and Karaman's work that outlines the research process. If your research topic is not interesting, obviously, you discuss among your peers as well. You look at the literature out there, whether this research topic is engaging or not. If it's not interesting, you should stop and figure out a different topic. But if your research topic is potentially interesting, then look at the literature. If the existing literature explains it, then there is no point of going further. But if there is a need to extend the theory further, this is what they call as the mystery, then you need to be able to look at how your study can work together to solve this mystery to be your contributions of your study. And this brings me to the next topic, which is the contributions to theory. This is a major factor when it comes to desk rejection, where there is no contribution or lack of contribution to theory. But what exactly is theoretical contribution? So I'm drawing this from the work of Coley and Gia, published in the Academy of Management Review. So when they are talking about theoretical contribution, basically there are 2 subcategories. One is about originality, which is the y-axis on the diagram. The other one is about utility, which is the x-axis on the diagram. So for originality, it can be categorized as either advancing scholarly understanding incrementally, so that is on the bottom left column, or advancing understanding in a way that provides some form of revelation, something that's absolutely new. So that's the top left-hand column. For the utility dimension, it can be categorized as practically useful or scientifically useful. You can read through the descriptions of each of these columns in their paper. Now, to illustrate this point, I draw from my work that was published in the Information Systems Journal, which is an ABDC A-star journal. So we wanted to explore digital social innovation from the perspectives of women entrepreneurs. So in the study, we draw from a theory called the digital differences theory of gender and information systems. Basically, the theory highlights that each of us has unique qualities that result in us facing and reacting to different opportunities or barriers in different ways. So for this theory, the differences between people can be based on individual identities, such as the differences in our education level, and so on and so forth. But the theory never focuses on technology. It only talks about the different influences or challenges. So in our study, instead of just focusing on the theory, we extend the theory by highlighting how women entrepreneurs use technology to address what the theory highlights as influences, how they overcome the individual social and structural influences as per the theory. I have highlighted that in green. There's also the practical reason of why we do this. We argue that the use of technology by women entrepreneurs can actually have an impact on enabling opportunities and overcoming barriers or influences. So there is the theoretical implication to broaden the theory. There's also the practical implication of our study. So in Coley and Gia's framework, our study would fall in the column of 3 about incremental originality and practical usefulness. So you need to think through of how your study contributes to theory based on that framework. Another way of looking at theoretical contributions is based on Thatcher and Fisher's work. They categorize theoretical contributions under 4 different ways. The first one is, of course, to develop new theory, which is about, obviously come up with a novel theoretical idea, one that has not been previously presented in the literature. A very good example of that is the development of social identity theory that was published many, many years ago, but there was a very novel theoretical idea. Okay, so that's about contribution to theory. The second way of theoretical contribution is by challenging or enhancing existing theory. So my work that was published in the Information Systems Journal that I talked about earlier is an example of this second point in terms of enhancing existing theory. Another example is the extension of stakeholder theory by Jones and colleagues, where they talk about instrumental stakeholder theory. Some of us might probably be familiar with stakeholder theory, but Jones and colleagues, they talk about relationships between a firm and its stakeholders based on incremental benefits and incremental costs, because the existing stakeholder theory does not cover the costs aspect of relationships. So their work is about enhancing existing theory. The third way is about synthesizing divergent ideas or literatures and form fresh theory. A very good example of that is Mark Suchman's work on organizational legitimacy. Basically, he synthesized very, very large and diverse literature on organizational legitimacy, and he came up with 3 forms of legitimacy, as you can see on the screen. There's pragmatic, there's moral legitimacy, and there's cognitive legitimacy. So he contributed to theory based on his synthesis of many different ideas and integrating them to generate new theoretical insights. The final way to contribute to theory is to put forward ideas and approaches to construct and convey new conceptual insights. So once again, I use the example of the work of Seibert and colleagues that I talked about earlier. They look at different theories and perspectives. They look at weak ties, structural holes, social resources theories. They also include a number of moderators. They also include a number of dependent variables. So in a way, their study specify new conceptual insights of this complex phenomenon. Now, I would encourage you to also read through Thatcher and Fisher's very recent article. They have given us a guideline for authors to go through these 8 points when we think of our theoretical contributions, right? They give us a step-by-step guide to think about and write about our theoretical contributions. So I actually use this, whether you can actually explain your theoretical contributions addressing each one of the 8 points there. Now, the next section of a paper is the hypothesis development. The purpose of the theory really is to ground hypothesis of the study. Obviously, you need to position the hypothesis in relation to related existing research. Then you need to develop a clear logical argument of why core variables are related. And obviously, you need to create a sense of coherence among the proposed relationships. Right. So just very quickly, in terms of my article that was published in the International Journal of HRM, that is what our conceptual model looks like. Basically, we wanted to examine the relationship between beliefs about artificial intelligence and employees' anxiety about AI, and how these variables then influence employees' change readiness for AI adoption. So we used several theories, one of which is the tripartite model of attitudes, which we explain in the paper, so I don't need to explain that. So when we developed the hypothesis 1, we used this theory and argued how the current literature can relate to the variables in our study. And you can read from the bold references there. And from there, we justified the relationship between the variables as highlighted in green. So we justified the relationship between cognition and behavior as per the theory, and how in our context, this cognition and behavior are positively associated. So we have to provide justifications before we outline hypothesis one, and we have to argue coherently for all the other hypotheses as well. The next section would be the methods and the results. Now, the most common way, or in fact, the simplest way to reject a paper is to look at the methods section. You reject a paper straight away. So I'm a guest editor of several special issues. I review a lot of papers as well. You reject a paper straight away when the authors failed to provide a complete description of the ways they obtain the data, or if they did not provide information about the operationalization of the constructs, or if they did not provide information on the types of analysis that they conducted. The method section is actually the most straightforward and the easiest to be picked up by an editor or reviewers to just reject a paper. I used my own article that was published in the Australian Journal of Public Administration, which is another ABDC A-rank journal. And this study looks at factors contributing to employees' innovative work behavior. So in the methods section, we had to describe how we collected the data. We also have to explain how the participants were contacted. So in our article, we said that our participants were contacted through the HR manager who put the survey link on their intranet. We also explained how the data were obtained, obviously through surveys in our case. And in the green highlights, we also outlined what kinds of assurance we provide for our participants. So in our case, we informed the respondents that the questionnaire was anonymous and the responses were confidential. And we also elaborated on how many actually responded to our study, and we also described the profile of our respondents. Then in the results section, we provided the results of the hypothesis testing and all the tests that we conducted. You can read the article for more information. Basically, when we present the results, we have to look at 3 C's, which is completeness, clarity, and credibility. So for completeness, you have to make sure that you provide the results of the hypothesis testing. You need to provide descriptive stats information, a table of means, standard deviations, and correlations. The second point is about clarity, is whether you can relate the findings to the hypothesis that you had proposed. So Chung and Shaw outlined a basic guidance or statements in the results section that you can follow. Basically, you can state, hypothesis 1 suggests that whatever it is. We find that, and then you illustrate your findings and where the readers can find them, which tables and figures that they need to look at. And then based on the results, do you support or not support that particular hypothesis? So it's very straightforward in terms of the structure of the sentences in the results section. Finally, it's also about the credibility of the result. It is about you as the author making sure that the interpretations of the results are correct. There is validity, there's reliability. If you have used alternative measures or model specifications in your analysis, you need to report them accordingly. So the same thing with qualitative results. You need to think of the 3 C's as well. So I use this example of my work that was published in the Information Systems Journal. This is a qualitative study where we collected the data from Australian female entrepreneurs. In the method section, we need to talk about the selection criteria, as you can read from the slide. We also outlined the profile of our interviewees as part of the methods section. We talked about their age, their size of the business, the entrepreneurial experience, and so on and so forth that we put in the methods section. We also outlined how we conducted the interview. So it's semi-structured interviews and what sort of questions that we asked our respondents. In terms of the results, we presented our thematic coding based on GIA's Guide of Qualitative Analysis, looking at first-order concepts, second-order themes, and then the aggregate dimensions. I will not go through the data analysis for quantitative or qualitative methods because that is not the focus of this presentation. But basically what you see on the screen is that you need to present the results in a meaningful way to show completeness, clarity, and credibility. Finally is the discussion section, and I'm drawing this from the article by Galatkanis and Tepper. The discussion section covers obviously the theoretical and practical implications. There's limitations as well as the future research directions. But for this, I will focus only on the theoretical implication section in the discussion. So this is really about the interpretation of the results. And Galatkanis and Tepper also talked about the fact that the discussion section is actually a paradox. You need to think of it as the ending, but also at the same time is also the beginning, right? And as the ending, the discussion needs to go back to the original theoretical motivation. I've heard from so many people, I don't know what to do in the discussion section apart from obviously summarizing the results. Well, I can tell you that the discussion section is one of the hardest sections, one of the most difficult sections to write. It's actually important to go back to the beginning of the paper. The discussion section should match the introduction with respect to the research question. What did the results show? You also need to answer the questions, what do we know? What don't we know? So what? What will we learn? How do the results of the study change or challenge or enhance existing literature? So there's a lot of questions that you need to answer in the discussion section. And a good discussion section also provides a synthesis of the various studies' empirical findings, and then you examine your results of your hypothesis tests in the context of existing literature. And you reconcile these findings as well. The discussion section could also be thought as the beginning of the paper. Normally, this is what I do when I write a paper. I know what the results are like, and I work backwards. So I ask myself, what do the results tell me? What about the theoretical constructs and the relationships? What sort of patterns actually emerge? How do they change the theory or the theories that I was planning to use? Actually, I've spent the most time when writing a paper on the introduction section. And the second section that I spend most of my time is on the discussion section. It's a very, very hard section to write. A lot of authors actually think of the discussion section as an afterthought. Yeah, saya sudah kelar semua. This is the final bit that I have to write. They actually think of it as the ending, but I can tell you it's important to look at the discussion section as also the beginning of your write-up journey of a journal article. So Galatkanis and Tepper here talked about the fact that we need to constantly ask ourselves, why is our study important? You need to be able to connect your study to the broader literature. So go back again to the introduction section of your paper. So in terms of the summary, provide a summary provided by Jean Bartonek there and colleagues about why certain papers can captivate the audience. So when you write a paper, think about how you challenge the existing theory. Think about how you actually present a counterintuitive argument where you challenge established theory and go against the common wisdom. You also need to present a quality and well-crafted story with good method section, good fit of data and theory, and have a great sample. The third most commonly cited reason of why an article is good is that you have a good writing. It's clear, it's engaging, it has rich descriptions, no grammatical errors, and well-structured. And then you need to be able to synthesize previous theories and comes up with either new theory or new findings. And the last 2 points on the slide there, you also need to make sure that you are able to illustrate the practical implications and ensure that your study has an impact in a sense that it encourages new empirical or theoretical work in future studies. So if you haven't started, get started in terms of writing an article. Go for a journal that best fits the manuscript. Look at the aims of the journal, but you also need to be very realistic. So for example, for your first paper, you probably won't go to an A journal straight away. Of course, that depends on your study, but you need to know the standard of each ranking of journals. Even getting a publication in a B journal, in the ABDC list B journal, is quite hard, let alone the higher ranked journals as well. Make sure you know where to publish. Do not publish in predatory journals, non-refereed journals, or even unranked journals. As I mentioned, in Australian business schools, we look at ABDC list journals. There are thousands of journals out there that are not on the ABDC list. And for us, we have to be very, very mindful and perhaps don't publish in unranked journals outside the list. Also consider submitting to and attending conferences for sharing ideas and listening to the current trends in your area. You might also want to consider special issues when publishing in a journal. It is pretty competitive when you publish in a special issue because you are competing against all the other journal articles that are specifically aligned with the topic chosen for that special issue. Now, if you're not an experienced author, you might want to consider co-authoring with experienced researchers, but experienced researchers also may not want to collaborate with you unless they know who you are and what you bring to the table. So networking is very important. Get to know scholars in your field, especially if you want to publish in top tier ranked journals. And finally, be mentally ready for rejections. I can tell you, how I've received so many rejections. I remember there was an article that I put in for the Journal of International Business Studies. It took 4 years and 5 rounds of revisions. And at the end of 5 rounds, it was a reject because there was one reviewer who still wasn't convinced. All the other reviewers were okay with it, but only one reviewer who was not convinced. I think that must be a very prominent scholar because just one reviewer who was not satisfied out of 4 or 5 reviewers. The paper was rejected after 5 rounds of revisions after 4 years of putting it in that journal. I was obviously very disappointed, and instead of taking it to another A-star journal, I sent it out to an A journal because obviously time has 5 years have passed, and by the time the data was published, it was 6 or 7 years prior to that, so it was very old data as well. So I sent it out to an A journal, and after 2 rounds of minor revisions, it got accepted in the Asia Pacific Journal of Management. But my point is, you have to be mentally ready for rejections because it happens to all of us all the time. So I want to end the presentation by highlighting the fact that learning to write for scholarly work is a journey of personal mastery. There are obviously lots of factors that play a role in facilitating our publication journey, but there is also the mental factors that I talked about earlier. We need to have epistemic curiosity. When we look at a potential research project, you need to be really curious about it, be really interested in it, because many of these research projects are over the long term. You work with collaborators over the long term, so it's important to be curious and interested about it in the first place. At the same time, you also need to be curious of your own developmental needs. There are so many things that we don't know, that we're still learning, but we need to understand, your strengths and weaknesses, be aware of your own learning needs and learning process. That's very important as well. Another mental factor is the importance of having this lifelong learning mindset. Some of us are familiar with the fixed versus the growth mindset. Malcolm Gladwell talked about 10,000 hours of practice to become an expert in something. So if we assume that we spend an hour every day to write, I know sometimes it's find it very challenging to even find an hour to write, but if let's say we assume that we find an hour every day to write, we will spend 365 hours a year to write. Right? That seems like a lot, but that does not make you an expert in writing. To be an expert, you need at least 10,000 hours of practice. When you calculate that, it is about 27 or 28 years for us to actually master writing. So it's a long, long time. But it's important to acknowledge that, it's possible, and we are all in the journey of personal mastery. It takes a lot of practice, dedication, but you can improve your skills through efforts, learning, and training, and attending sessions like this as well. The final thing that I would like to share is that is the conference that I will be chairing. So I'm a co-chair of one of the tracks in the Academy of International Business Conference, which is a major conference in the international business area. This conference will be held in Seoul from the 2nd to the 6th of July 2024. So my track is the first track, which is on the internationalization processes and international entrepreneurship. The deadline for submission is January the 10th. You can do a Google search on the Conference Scholar. So I look forward to receiving your submissions if you're interested. So I would encourage you to, no matter what the conference is, whether this conference or another conference, send out your article to a conference so that you can get feedback, and you also attend the conference to listen to the current trends as well. I look forward to discussing and collaborating with you. I've listed 3 pages of references that you can read more about. So obviously this session is very specific in terms of how you write. So it's not just the tips, but in terms of how you actually structure a paper as well. So 3 pages there. And with that, I end my presentation. I hope that you have found them useful. I'm more than happy to be connected on LinkedIn and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you very much. Any questions? Let me see if I can.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, thank you, Professor Yuli Siseno. Amazing material for us in today. Every single slide is very, very important, and we cannot miss every single slide from your presentation. And I think one sentences that a sentence that I remember is how to spark curiosity, and learning is a journey of professional mastery. Okay, all participants, maybe you have some question to deliver to Professor Yuli Siseno. I give you opportunity, maybe one question first, and maybe Professor Yuli Siseno can answer directly. Maybe.
Thank you. Ini saya baca dari Mas Benny juga. Ini kayaknya direct message ke saya. Terima kasih ya Mas. Mohon arahan, bisa kolaborasi. Ya, I'm more than happy Mas. Kalau misalnya ada draft paper, if you would like me to, give you feedback, I'm more than happy to do so as well.
Okay, Prof. Thank you very much. And then another participant, maybe you have question. I'm sorry for the trouble for my camera.
Right.
Maybe another participant.
May I?
Okay, if there is no participant, another participant, maybe Bubini. Okay, Bubini, you can deliver your question directly.
Thank you, Mas Saiful. Professor Yuli Suseno. It is echoing.
Iya.
Saya
unmute.
Unmute, Bu. Belum di unmute. Unmute.
Okay. Very interesting presentation from Yuli. I'm sorry if it is a naive question. From the slide 14, if I'm not mistaken, when you explain about topic choice, what, why, it seems that the topic choice comes from or triggered by the curiosity. The best topic spark and maintain curiosity. Sometimes as a students, we end up and I don't know what to write. So my question is, maybe you can share and explain more about how to increase curiosity so that we can focus on in the same topic in our research to develop our research path. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih Bu Benny. I think that's really interesting ya. Sekarang murid-murid PhD saya, when they come into their study, I will ask them to attend a lot of sessions. So things like this that we have as well. We have a lot of informal discussions in the school as well. And sometimes, so for example, I'm using one example here. She actually changed her entire topic from, I can't remember what it is, a couple of years, about 6 months ago, to now sharing economy, because I keep talking about sharing economy. Obviously I've got a lot of research areas, but I was talking about sharing economy and how my research of sharing economy enlightens, some interesting aspects. And I told her, oh, there's a lot of things that we still don't know about the sharing economy. And she did ask me, oh, ayo kita, I have a couple of articles, mari kita ngomong Prof, bisa nggak kita diskusi? And it just So she was curious and I was curious as well. And we had a fantastic discussion on that. We had that a couple of times. And then because of that, she changed her entire thesis to become the sharing economy. Now, because she changed that, because she was so curious about it, she was so passionate in terms of finding literature in terms of that topic. So the previous topic that she was thinking about, mungkin dia didirect dengan orang lain, the past experience gitu. Dia mikirnya ini, but sekarang dia wah ada langsung light bulb. Dia bilang light bulb open up, switched on the light bulb after the discussion. So having sort of discussions with people, whether it's other PhD students, supervisors, the colleagues of supervisors, attending sessions like this, I think it's really important as well. So if I could use my example of my own study. So I look at social capital karena saya di industri itu everything is about relationship. So my research is on networks and social capital. Everything is about relationship. Yeah, working with multinational companies, working with individuals, organizations, working with political actors as well. Everything is about relationship. So I was very interested in that, and therefore my PhD is on social capital because I know that that it's my area. But now it sort of like diverges into all the different areas. So I am interested in women entrepreneurs because I see that women entrepreneurs, especially in Australia, they are playing a very important role, but they are still not appreciated as much. So I talked about the barriers that these female entrepreneurs are facing. Even though Australia is a very advanced country, but women are still facing discrimination in many workplaces, including female entrepreneurs. So that sparked my curiosity. So yes, we are in a very advanced society, but still there is a group of group of participants who are still have not been explored in terms of their experiences. So I wanted to examine their experiences. So I did a qualitative study for women entrepreneurs rather than a quantitative study. So once I sort of like have a good idea, the next stage of that, I will do a quantitative study. But it's sort of like it needs to come from your heart as well, right? And it comes from your the insights in terms of what you read and also listen to from others as well. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much. So for the beginning, you already focus on social entrepreneurship, or maybe a different kind of research field for the first when the first time
The first
the
time
first time
yeah, my PhD study is on social capital, on networks. So that was because of my industry background. So I did my social capital study. And then after I finished, I published in social capital and I published on networks. So that was sort of my studies for, a couple of years. And then I branch out to a lot of different things because my master study is also about management of technology. So I'm also interested in the technology, the innovation management aspect. So I guess it's from the background, your background as well. So, and then obviously, when I started, there's the sharing economy was just starting out with the Uber, and it obviously now is still a lot. There's already a lot, right? But at that time, it was just starting out. There is a lot of legal requirements. There's a lot of implications in terms of the workers and things like that. So it just sparked my curiosity about the things that happened in the workplace and around you as well.
So to keep curiosity.
Yes.
So to keep curiosity is still to be maintained, right?
Yes.
To find another topic and again.
Absolutely. And if you look at the sharing economy, so for one of my students who is doing a sharing economy, we brought in the social capital angle because, that's my research area as well. And the sharing economy is also about relationship as well. Why would I want to use this company again and again? For example, things like that. So it's about relational based as well. All right. So we brought in different areas. So it doesn't mean, there are some scholars who probably ask you to focus on one research area. But for me, I focus on more interdisciplinary research areas. And I think it is better in a way because I can use multiple theories from different areas when I try to explain something. So I use the psychology aspect, tripartite model of attitudes that I talked about earlier. I use the IS literature as well, because I had a background in IS and things like that I can incorporate into different areas. So I think it's important to have a broad scope of mindset that I talked about earlier as well.
Thank you very much. Really inspiring. Thank you, Prof. Yuli.
Thank you, Bu Benny.
Okay, thank you, Bu Bene, for your interesting discussion. Maybe another other participant have some question to deliver to Prof. Susilo, Prof. Suseno, because it is very, very valuable opportunity to us, for me especially as a doctoral student. We have obligation to publish our research, Prof. So I think this is very, very important for us. Maybe another participant.
Susah-susah gampang, Mas.
Betul.
Susah-susah gampang ya. Iya, banyak students itu just basically cut and paste from the chapters.
Betul, Prof.
And write it as a journal article. It's a different way of writing journal article. You need to be concise. You get all the points, but you need to make it concise in a maximum of 40 pages instead of 300 over pages, right? So it's a different way of thinking about your study as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Prof. And then mungkin pertanyaan saya sebelum teman-teman menyampaikan pertanyaan, mungkin saya juga ada sedikit pertanyaan, Prof. Mungkin for the beginner, especially for me, beginner to publish our research, whether it is the best option, whether apakah kita berangkat dari the mediocre journal, misalkan Q4 in Scopus misalkan, or langsung to the top tier, mungkin Q2 kalau Scopus. Actually, itu kira-kira mana the best optionnya? Ada plus minusnya tentunya kan. Kalau di mediocre journal atau jurnal yang mungkin level bawah, mungkin peluangnya itu lebih besar. Tetapi kemudian kalau berangkat dari jurnal yang paling tinggi, mungkin memang kita ditolak, tapi nanti perbaikan kita bisa kita turunkan untuk jurnal yang lebih rendah. Kira-kira what is the best option as the beginner? Maybe you have some masukan ke kami. Terima kasih,
bagus sekali pertanyaannya, Mas. My first paper was published in International Journal of Human Resource Management, so that's an A journal. And a lot of my students, we publish in a B. We start with a B journal, but kita pertama kali masukin di A journal dulu. So we get feedback, exactly as what you said. We get feedback, and then after rounds of revision, we'll try out another A journal. And again, if we are rejected, we go straight to B. And most of the time, they got published in B. So it's also about the time factor. Karena revision itu panjang. The A journal will take you, some of them 2 years, for you to get accepted as well. But the feedback that you get is pretty quick. It's about 3 months or 4 months that you get your feedback. Obviously, you don't get the desk rejection. Kalau desk rejection ya, editornya biasanya ngomongnya not enough theoretical contribution, datanya kurang lengkap gitu-gitu. It's very short ya. Tapi kalau udah pas desk rejection, masuk ke reviewers, they will normally get about 3 reviewers, 2 to 3. Normally it's 3 reviewers. They will give you extensive comments, and you can work on these comments as well. So kalau murid saya encourage mereka untuk publish during the PhD study as well. Karena itu mereka jadi bisa address some of the questions that the editor or the reviewers might ask. I have never thought about this, how come I did not think about this construct? Or why would I want to think about this construct? So the justification needs to be clearer. So it's I encourage them to actually do writing journal article early in their study. Obviously, some of them may not be able to publish that early as well, but having that sort of exercise is important. So I think in your case, you obviously need to make sure that the manuscript is good quality and strong as well. And then you send out to A, because if there's a lot of grammatical errors, you'll get a desk rejection straight away. So that's a waste of time. So make sure that the manuscript is solid, in your opinion. Obviously, after receiving a lot of feedback, go straight to the A journal, and then you get the feedback. Dan abis itu improve on it. Try another A journal if you can. But if not, you go to B. I would not, for PhD students, there are some PhD students who publish in C journal, so ABDC cuma ada sampai C. I don't really encourage my students to publish in C kalau bisa, but to focus on B, and there are many B journals in the ABDC list, and it gets better after you go round and round of revision. It will get better, and I'm sure that one of the B journals will accept as well. So yeah, target, aim high, and then you drop down a little bit, but not too much.
Yes. Okay, terima kasih. Thank you very much, Prof. Yuli, because it's important suggestion for me, especially when we must begin from the top tier or from the middle grade. But it's my first experience is like your suggestion. when my first publication, so we start from the very good journal in Q1, for example, but rejected after 1 year, but we can submit it and accept it in Q3, Q4 in Scopus. Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Mas. Prof. Yuli. Maybe another participant want to still, we have many time, maybe 5 until 10 minutes. Maybe can deliver in bahasa ya. Bahasa Indonesia mungkin enggak masalah. Apaan? Enggak ada ya. Oke, mungkin saking speechlessnya Prof, jadi mungkin excited dengan materinya Prof Yuli.
Banyak ya, soalnya it quite specific and scientific ya kalau writing a journal itu. Jadi words-nya itu juga yang dipakai juga, kita nggak normal itu nggak pakai kan, justify gitu, kita nggak pakai in normal language, but you have to use that kind of language in writing a journal paper. Dan juga saya tadi give a couple of points, ada 8 points. Just try to address these points in terms of theoretical contribution. If you are able to answer that every single point clearly, then you have something. But if you can't, one of them you're still like, oh, nggak tahu nih, not so sure, then you probably need to rethink your paper again. Yeah.
Okay, terima kasih. Maybe our time is up. I have difficulties to sum up because every single slide is very important to us, from us. So I think maybe teman-teman bisa merangkum sendiri ya. Tapi the most excited for me is about how to spark curiosity to the readers gitu ya. Kemudian ada wawasan juga terkait dengan indeks reputable journal, yang kita tahu kalau di kita kan pasti yang pakai Scopus gitu ya. Tadi ada ABDC, itu ada AB apa sih, itu juga menjadi sebuah wawasan tambahan buat kami. Ada FD50 and then ABC and mungkin itu yang bisa saya sedikit sampaikan dari saya, Prof. Sekali lagi saya ucapkan terima kasih. Thank you very much.
Sama-sama.
Waktu dari
I hope that is useful. Jadi saya tadi juga bukan ngomong tentang prosesnya, saya juga ngomong every single section of writing a paper, from the introduction, the so what question, what is your contribution, grounding your hypothesis, methods, results, and discussion. So hopefully that gives you clarity from the start until the end. Sekarang saya lagi revision of a third round revision of another paper, and that takes me what, 4 months just for the third round of revision. So it's a lot of work. It's a very painful process as well. But we have to publish our work to obviously to get recognized as well in the scientific community. Yeah. So I
Okay.
wish you all the best of luck, and look forward to, obviously collaborating and hearing from you again. If I can help in any way, if you would like to get feedback, I'm more than happy to give you feedback as well in terms of your areas. Maybe there are some areas that I'm not familiar with. I can only give feedback in terms of the structure of the sentences, for example, or not very clear in the introduction and so on and so forth. Ya,
Oke,
But
terima
terima
kasih, Prof.
kasih lagi atas undangannya, and I hope to
Oke,
catch up
mungkin
with you some other time.
oke, sebelum kita Prof Yuli Suseno live, mohon izin untuk menyempatkan waktu untuk foto bersama, Prof. Sambil nanti saya kembalikan dulu, I give back to the Master of Ceremony, Bu Benedikta. Thank you very much, Prof. Once again, selamat siang. Wassalamualaikum
Selamat
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
siang. Terima kasih.
Thank you very much. Terima kasih for Professor Yuli Suseno for the inspiring presentation and valuable insight about writing for a publication. And thank you, Pak Saiful, as a moderator. Before we end the second session of sharing and knowledge presentation, our highly appreciation is rewarded to the speaker, Professor Yuli Suseno, and also for moderator by presenting certificate for speaker and moderator virtually. The certificate will be shared here on screen. Thank you once again. Thank you, Professor Yuli Suseno and Mas Saiful Gosi as a moderator. Thank you. Thank you so much. And then for taking picture for the documentation, please open
Iya.
your camera.
Ini foto saya di mana-mana ini jadinya.
Become famous
Iya,
and viral.
terima kasih. Interesting. Thank you. Thank you.
Mas Saiful, you please help. Okay, I will count 1, 2, 3. There are, wait a minute. There are 3 slides. Second slide. 1, 2, 3. And the last one. Once again, thank you for your presentation. See you again.
See you again. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your conference. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Bye.
Prof.
Bye.
Well, our wonderful participant, we will break for praying and salat and having lunch. Please come again to the Zoom meeting at 1 p.m. We will continue to the third speaker after break. So please join again here at 13 or 1 p.m. It's right. Thank you so much. For the link of attendance will be given or shared at the last session of the speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Bu
Thank
Ben.
you, Mbak.
Masih.
Sama-sama. My dear teacher.
Thank you, Miss Bene.
Tapi dia tidak bersuara.
Dengan visi menjadikan dia sebagai lembaga ilmu administrasi yang bermutu dan diakui oleh khalayak luas, baik di dalam maupun di luar negeri, kami akan selalu meningkatkan kualitas dan kinerja pendidikan yang berbasis pada nilai-nilai tata kelola kewirausahaan. Di dalam pengembangan pendidikan, kami juga didukung dengan administrasi yang betul yang mumpuni dan ahli dan ilmu di dalam memiliki latar belakang pendidikan dari dalam maupun industri atau tenaga pendidik media UG dan jarang menggunakan praktisi profesi sesuai dengan mereka adalah orang-orang yang memiliki dedikasi tinggi untuk menghasilkan SDM yang ahli di bidang ilmu administrasi sehingga mampu berkontribusi demi kemajuan bangsa.
PDIA membuka berbagai ruang-ruang keilmuan di bidang ilmu administrasi. Di antaranya adalah ilmu administrasi publik dan ilmu administrasi. Keduanya memiliki sub-sub keilmuan yang membentuk beberapa program pendidikan yang telah mencetak lulusan-lulusan yang kompeten dan kredibel di bidang keilmuan administrasi. Melalui evaluasi dan juga peningkatan mutu yang terus-menerus dilakukan, PDIA diharapkan selalu menjadi lembaga pendidikan ilmu administrasi yang berkualitas dan dipercaya oleh masyarakat luas.
Tata kelola keuangan dan sumber daya di Fakultas Ilmu Administrasi Universitas Brawijaya dilaksanakan secara terstruktur dengan menjadikan data sebagai landasan pengalokasian kebutuhan yang mendukung terselenggaranya proses pendidikan yang optimal. Di samping mahasiswa dipersiapkan sebagai yang diawali dengan baik, lalu juga melakukan pengembangan karakter atas minat bakat yang dimulai oleh mahasiswa.
It is my dream to complete my study in the administrative field. Faculty of Administrative Science, University of Brawijaya has become a in addition to the quality and good learning experience, student output has high employment opportunities to compete globally.
The learning activities are delivered creatively and innovatively by the lecturers so students can get real learning experience to provide their first a picture of professional work. And I think this experience really helps students to shape their attitudes as the main factors in the world of work.
Profesor menyapa Anda dengan kisah inspiratif, inovatif, dan tentunya berbagi pengalaman dan informasi dari seorang guru besar. Universitas Brawijaya patut berbangga karena memiliki sederet guru besar yang berkualitas. Salah satunya adalah Profesor Syamsiar Syamsuddin atau biasa dipanggil dengan Prof. Syam. Seorang guru besar. Profesor Dr. Syamsiar Syamsuddin dari Fakultas Ilmu Administrasi Universitas Brawijaya. Beliau salah satu guru besar yang gigih, disiplin, dan amanah, sehingga meskipun mencapai purna tugas, tetapi dipercaya untuk mengajar oleh Rektor Universitas Brawijaya. Profesor Dr. Syamsiar Syamsuddin dari Fakultas Ilmu Administrasi. Beliau merupakan wanita pertama di Fakultas Ilmu Administrasi yang sudah mendapat gelar guru besar. Mari kita mengenal lebih dekat dengan beliau dalam episode Profesor Syamsiar.
Satu tuh saya mahasiswa yang sangat-sangat apa ya, mungkin dikatakan disiplin, rajin, sehingga setiap kuliah itu di kelas itu saya selalu menjadi ketua kelas, sering diminta jadi ketua kelas. Saya selalu duduk di depan dan selalu mencatat dengan baik, sehingga catatan saya itu selalu jadi rebutan pada waktu ujian. Sehingga akhirnya teman-teman itu punya punya semacam upaya supaya catatan saya itu dapat dipelajari oleh mereka melalui diktat. Nah, pada waktu itu kan tidak ada fotokopi, tidak seperti sekarang. Jadi diktat saya itu kemudian dijual oleh teman-teman. Malah dosen yang bersangkutan, misalnya Dr. Andes Waragono yang mengajar filsafat itu senang banget, malah diberi kata pengantar. Sejak itu saya menjadi asisten, menjadi dosen. Itu menjadikan saya mempunyai motif untuk menjadi dosen, kemudian ngambil S3 lagi dan seterusnya, sehingga saya menjadi doktor dan jadi ketika lulus SD itu saya juara se-Kabupaten Sambas dan hadiah sepeda karena nilai saya itu lumayan 10, 10, 10, 9. 9-nya itu menulis ya. Pada waktu itu ada pelajaran menulis, sekarang tidak ada ya, sehingga tulisannya anak-anak itu jelek semua. Termasuk tulisan mahasiswa senior nilai saya lumayan. Nah, ketika saya SMP, saya juga masih juara kelas. Dulu kan ada mata pelajaran aljabar, sekarang matematik. Tidak ada ya. Aljabar saya itu 10, 10, 10 terus. Tapi ketika SMA, saya menemukan guru-guru yang di sana kan hanya satu SMA, di Malang kebetulan ada